If kickers are in your league, they matter. They matter towards the final score, and they matter towards you winning a fantasy football championship or not. I'm doing the homework, so you don't have to. We're going to get into my week 2 streamers and my rankings for kickers. Let's get into it right now. What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Hoff. You can feel free to follow me on X at the FF Realist. Most importantly, this is the Face Off Sports Network, where we rank all of the positions, including defense, including kickers, because they matter. So we're going to get into it right now. Now, listen, I like to start off. I started this off in week 1. If you guys watched, I'll start it off again, give you a little perspective. Why do kickers matter? Because again, you hear kickers and you start to giggle. Kickers are stupid. Kickers aren't cool. I get it. They're not fashionable. People try and get them out of their league. But if kickers are in your league, let's take this in half-point formats in week 1. Spencer Schrader, who was rostered in 0% of sleeper leagues, had more points than CD Lamb. Marinate on that. You could talk about CD Lamb drops. You could talk about this. You could talk about that. He's scoring more. Spencer Schrader, rostered in 0% of leagues, is scoring more than a player that's drafted in 99.9% of first round of fantasy football drafts. Keep that in mind. And by the way, CD Lamb, as of this recording, was a wide receiver 14 on the week. So it wasn't even like CD Lamb was like wide receiver 30. That's why kickers matter. The points do matter in the end. So I'm going to recap our streamers from last week really quick, and then we'll get into my week 2 streamers. Then we're going to go into a tier set of rankings. I will tell you guys that if you have any questions, fire them into the comments. Along with that, you can also join our Discord. I'll put the link in the description for where you can join. We've got paid services there where you can get a lot more detailed rankings, so on and so forth. We even have a free version where you could just come in, just chat with guys like me, Pete, Matt, all the guys from Face Off, have a good time in there. But yeah, so I'll drop all that stuff in there. The rankings will drop here. They will drop there. They will drop on X. They're dropping everywhere. So streamers from last week. Now, by the way, these are all consisting of players that are rostered in less than 50% of sleeper leagues. Last week, we had Will Reichert, who was on Monday Night Football, did have 9 points, so we don't hate that. Then we also had Will Lutz of the Denver Broncos. The Broncos had their trouble, but Lutz still scored 8 fantasy points. That's not terrible either. Our leader in the clubhouse, our winner, our breadwinner, so to speak, for the video was Kamani Fairbairn. He went on to score 13 fantasy points, which was good for third at the position. And, he was rostered in a little less than 40% of leagues. He might be rostered around 40. We might get to him in a minute. That's a tease, or maybe it's a spoiler. Anyway, so all 3 of our kickers produced more than, they produced 8 or more points. So that's pretty damn good. You like to get that from your kicking position on a consistent basis. Now, let's get into my streamers for week 2. Andres Barragales, formerly the kicker of the Miami Hurricanes, now the kicker of the New England Patriots. In his first game, he hit 1 field goal and 2 of 3 extra points against the Raiders. This week he's going up against the Dolphins. And listen, no disrespect to my Dolphin friends, but I mean, if you saw what they did against the Indianapolis Colts, this seems like a team that's in disarray. This seems like a team where the wheels can fall off at any moment, if they're even riding with 4 wheels at this point. I think this is a good opportunity for the Patriots to drive the ball down the field. If they're not able to punch it in, if they're not ready for that Josh McDaniels offense just yet, maybe that means that they're going to be kicking field goals. I think that's where Andres comes in. Rostered in 0% of leagues. That's pretty important. Listen, Daniel Jones is taking all the headlines, but I mentioned him at the top here. Spencer Schrader, he was our number 1 kicker on the week with 15 points. So you saw the kind of damage a kicker can do against this Miami Dolphins special teams. So I will take my shot here on Andres if you need a kicker again. Andres Borregales, not a kicker you've heard about a lot, especially if you're not somebody who's really in the know. So that's a guy to pick up. I will just say the disclaimer on here is there because this game is in Miami. There is some thunderstorms in the forecast over the next few days. It does bleed into Sunday. I will say, though, the percentage of rain between, say, Thursday and Sunday dips down quite a bit. So I would say keep an eye on that because it could fall further and further throughout the week. Who knows? Maybe it's a passing storm. So keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so Andres Borregales of the New England Patriots is my first streamer on the week. And again, only rostered in 0% of leagues. And you know what? I'm going to keep it low again before we raise it up with the last streamer. I'm going to keep it low. How low can we go? We can't go lower than 0, but we can go pretty low. We're going to go with Chad Ryland of the Arizona Cardinals. He's only rostered in 2% of sleeper leagues. I like him in this matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. Ryland was one of 10 kickers with double-digit fantasy points this past week. He has another week indoors, this time, again, like I said, going up against the Panthers. In 6 games at home last season, Ryland had average 9 points per game. So that's also nice to look at as well. Those opponents, by the way, that he faced, they were in the middle of the road in terms of points allowed to position. So he wasn't like he was facing teams that were allowing a ton of points to kickers. So you like that as well. You like to see a kicker who doesn't just need a meatball of a special teams to go ahead and produce double-digit fantasy points. He was doing it against tough opponents. So like that, like to hear that from Ryland. Listen, in terms of the opponent, Carolina Panthers allowed the most points to kickers last season. They picked up right where they left off in week 1 here. They were tied for the second most points allowed in week 1. They were also one of 3 teams to allow a league high 4 field goal attempts on average in this season opener. So Chad Ryland, I think, could have a nice opportunity here to be one of the better kickers on the week. And again, only rostered in 2% of your leagues. Listen, I gave you 0%. I gave you 2%. I'm going to bump it up here. Just, I gotta. But it is less than 50%. And it is our golden boy from week 1. It's Kayami Fairbairn of the Houston Texans. This one will be on Monday Night Football, which, by the way, there are 2 Monday Night Football games this week. He is going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This will be at home for the Houston Texans. So, yes, this will be another indoor matchup. We'd like to see that. So, only our first streamer, Andres Borregales, is going to be doing outdoors. And again, keep an eye on the potential inclement weather, but indoors here for the Houston Texans. And right now, Fairbairn is only rostered in 42% of leagues. I talked about it last week. He finished 4th in points last season. He's back at it again as a streamer. As mentioned, he put up 13 points in the season opener. That was good for 3rd at the position, like I had said. So I like this opportunity here. Now he's going up against a Buccaneers defense that was towards the top of the league in terms of first downs allowed. Now, the reason why I mention that is because I have my skepticisms about this Houston Texans offense outside, of course, Nico Collins, even though Nico Collins was a damn near no factor in week 1. I'm very skeptical of this Houston Texans offense. But then again, when I look at the first downs that the Buccaneers were allowing, this tells me maybe the Texans can get into field position to get some field goals. And field goals help more than extra points, obviously, if you're aware of scoring of kickers. That's 3 points instead of 1. So I like this opportunity here for Fairbairn to get some points on the board. I think we could see him get double-digit fantasy points for the second week in a row. So that is another kicker I like. I'm expecting him to put it through the uprights early and often. If I can get into now my tier 1 of kickers, we'll go through my top 12 kicker rankings really quick. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, if there's a kicker who doesn't make it in the top 12 that you want to ask about, fire it into the comments. I will answer it. But in tier 1, we're going to go with Chris Boswell. So on brand for Mike Tomlin to label his kicker as a serial killer, but he did it, and Chris Boswell earned it. he wasn't in my top 12 rankings, so he basically serial killed my top 12 rankings. Listen, the Seahawks, if the Seahawks played a proper kicker last week, they would have gone ahead and they would have allowed an extra 3 points. You know, you know, they could have allowed at least 8 points. So, they went up against Jake Moody, who is now unemployed. So take that for what you will. But I like Chris Boswell in this matchup against the Seahawks. It's a much different kicker than what they faced last week. So, and I also think that I will say this in terms of respecting the Seattle Seahawks. They had a very nice defensive line against the 49ers, nice pass rush. So while I think that the Steelers can drive the ball down the field, I don't think we're going to see Aaron Rodgers throwing, 4 or 5 touchdown passes again. I think there's going to need to be some opportunity for some field goals in there. That's where Chris Boswell comes in. Then we're going to go with Brandon Aubrey to round out my tier 1 ranked second. Listen, I have my doubts about Aubrey going up against the Eagles, even though he was still in my top 12. He had underperformed in the past, but he was, again, one of those kickers, one of those 12 kickers with double-digit points in week 1. Even with the Giants' ineptitude in offense in week 1, Graham Gano still had 8 points. Um, I think this is a nice opportunity here. I think it reflects on over to Brandon Aubrey. I think Brandon Aubrey is going to be able to compete with that. I think he outscores Graham Gano. I don't think Graham Gano gets 8 points. I think he's more like 5. He's not even in my top 12 this week. So I like Aubrey here. Aubrey has done well in the past against the Giants. Aubrey has averaged 9 points on a per game basis against the New York Football Giants. It's a small sample size, but it's a sample size that matters. And, I also think that with the quarterback play here with New York, I think it's just a matter of time before things cave in. And then it's just kicking fever for Brandon Aubrey. So I like him to round out my tier 1. We go into tier 2, Cameron Dicker, Calmy Fairbairn, and then Tyler Loop. I got a lot of complaints. Tyler Loop wasn't initially in my top 12 rankings. I'll get to him in a second, though. But Cameron Dicker, I mean, what's not to love going up against the Carolina Panthers? He had 9 points in week 1. I've mentioned multiple times that the Carolina Panthers allow a ton of points to the kicking position. Well, actually, he's not playing the Panthers, so I apologize for that. He's going up against the Raiders, so we'll fix that part. But I like this opportunity going up against the Raiders as well. I like Cameron Dicker in general. You watch the way Justin Herbert drove the ball down the field. He looks comfortable in this Greg Roman offense finally, and I think that bodes well for a Cameron Dicker. I just think it's going to bleed into more opportunities for him to put it through the uprights. So whether it's the Panthers, whether it's the Raiders, I still like Cameron Dicker to put up some points there. So yeah, give me Cameron Dicker on the road at the Raiders indoor matchup. I will take that. I think the Chargers offense is going to be rolled this year. It might be one of the best offenses in football. So, and usually when it's one of the best offenses in football, it's usually a leading kicker behind it. If we go, Miami Fairbairn again, you go back to my streamer section here. He's one of my favorite streamers. So he's a guy I'm definitely looking at. Tyler Loop was a guy I was criticized for, like I said, not putting him in my top 12. I will say, and this is why you should always just stick with me beyond these recordings, because on X, I posted my last set of rankings before Toe met ball there in week 1, and Tyler Loop did sneak into my top 12. So by Saturday, he was in top 12, and he wound up delivering 12 points. So there you go. He's going up against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns only allowed 5 points to Evan McPherson, but I think that has more to do with the Bengals starting slow again offensively, which feels like it's forever. Every single season, this is what they do. So I'm still going to go with Miami Fairbairn here in this matchup. It's not Miami Fairbairn. I'm sorry. Tyler Loop in this matchup. I will take him. And listen, Ravens coming off an embarrassing loss on prime time. I think it's a nice opportunity for them to bounce back in a very angry way. Give me Snoopaloop in week 2. If I can go to tier 3, we're going to go with the names with the likes of number 6, Will Lutz, number 7, Cam Little, number 8, Chad Ryland. Listen, Will Lutz was one of my streamers last week, like I mentioned, had 8 points. That was with the offense having some trouble and underperforming. Saw some tough passes from Bo Nix. Something tells me the Broncos are going to want to put up a stronger fight against the Colts, much more so than what the Dolphins did. So I believe that's going to equal to more field goal opportunities for Will Lutz. So give me Will Lutz at the Colts there as my sixth ranked kicker. Cam Little, who is one of my favorite kickers on the year. Um, I absolutely love him in this matchup. He's going up against the Bengals. I think this is a nice opportunity for him to do some damage. I just think that the Jaguars offense under the Liam Cohen, the Duval offense there, they're going to continue to roll throughout the year. So I like this matchup as well. I just think he's going to be one of those consistent guys who's going to have it's going to be a rarity when he doesn't give you, say, 7 points on the week. 6 points, whatever. Like I don't think you're going to see many weeks with him with 5 or less points to say that. I'll say by the end of the year, he's going to be one of the highest average points among kickers. So give me Cam Little on that one, and then rounding it out again, I'm going to go Chad Ryland to round out my tier three. You guys heard me talk about him on the streamers portion, only rostered in 2% of leagues, so definitely a name to keep in mind. With that said, we will now go to tier four. That's kickers 9 through 12. That's Chase McLaughlin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Andy Borregales, who I mentioned in one of my streamers, Jake Elliott, who you see in the picture there in the Super Bowl, and then Will Reichert, who did pretty well on Monday Night Football. 9 points. We'll take that. We don't hate that. Chase McLaughlin was my number one ranked kicker on the week. That was last week. He did disappoint. That said, I do think he bounces back, but not enough to be in the top 5. I got him sitting at 9 right now. I don't hate that call. Like, talk about Kami Fairbairn. They are playing on Monday night. It's going to be a game in Houston, so it will be indoors for Chase. So I do like Chase McLaughlin to bounce back, just not to the level of my top end kickers. So we're going to put him there at 9. Andy Borregales, again, I mentioned him in my streamers, so you could take a look there. Jake Elliott. Now, this is an interesting one. I want to put a little disclaimer here because there is the opportunity mentioned. Remember I talked about Tyler Loop and I said that he rose up my ranks throughout the weekend. I think Jake Elliott's a guy who can rise up my rankings, a guy that I would not be surprised if he goes into, say, tier 3. Top end of tier 3, maybe, depending on how some weather shakes out in certain places and how I'm feeling. But I think Jake Elliott has a good shot to outperform where I have him here ranked 11th. Going up against Kansas City Chiefs, he scored 8 points in week 1. If this is a high scoring affair, Jake Elliott's clearly going to be a part of that. So keep in mind, he's a guy that could rise up my ranks. For now, I got him at 11. And the last guy rounding out my top 12 is going to be Will Reichert of the Minnesota Vikings. Again, did well last night, had 9 points, hit the longest field goal, I believe, in Soldier Field history. So he's got that going for him. But I talked about Cam Little, where I think it's just gonna be consistent, where he's gonna have points scored. I think we're gonna see the same sort of thing. He's going to be going up against the Falcons. The Falcons, much like the Panthers, maybe it's something with the NFC South. They just like allowing points to kickers. So I think Will Reichert's going to consistently score, 6 to 7 points on a per week basis. So those are my top 12. Those are my streamers. Again, 2 of my streamers are rostered in 2% or less of leagues. So you can go get them right now. But that's going to do it for today. I'll tell you guys again, leave your questions, give comments in the comment section. I will get to them. I'll answer them all. Until next time, stay thirsty, be kind to one another. We'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.